in the subnet we have that is in resources, right? And we have created energy in that we have configured for the depends on the requirement, the different type of the network traffic rule, correct?
Hmm.
Network traffic rule, right? We achieved that is and also we discussed about application security group, and we talked about Azure Load Balancer theoretical part, right? Load Balancer. So basically, what is the requirement we would need? We will create a VNet, we'll create a subnet, and I will create a for that is in two VMs in the same subnet. Okay, and we'll build a web application. We'll deploy. Web application for verifying the load balancer. Okay, so this is prerequisite. Is when you talk about the load balancer, Azure Load Balancer, we have again there are two type of Azure Load Balancer. Okay, number one is basic, second one is standard. So today we will be talking about basic. Standard, it's again little advanced level, more secure level, right? We would need for this. This also we'll talk about later. So basic, it would ask you to, before you creating Azure Load Balancer, what kind of load balancer you are creating. If you selected basic, it must your resources. If we selected basic load balancer, our resource must be resource means VMs in availability set. Okay, what is availability set? There is a boundary. What do you mean by that here? Availability set. We will be creating a VNet. This is VNet. Under this, we will be having for subnet. (10.0.1.0/24). And we will be creating a VM. Okay, so when we wanted to plan for Azure Load Balancer basic, we must create a availability set here. This is availability set. And this is called, I can say, AS availability set -1. Inside it, we should have the VM1. and we'll have that other VM. VM2, and we will install that as a web application.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a platform needed for to build our infrastructure. Now we would need for here load balancer. Okay, this is a load balancer. We are going to creating. This is Azure Load Balancer. Now this Azure Load Balancer has that couple of things to be understand here. In this, we have prerequisite as front line IP address, frontline IP address. We would need for backend pool. We would need for health probe. We discussed last class, which is health check. Frontline IP address. Now, initially we would have the two default public IP address, right? Initially, for the lab, right? 2 VM, we will have individual public IP address, correct? And what initially what we need to do for deploying web application, we will use individual public IP address to access VM for RDP, right? And this we can do it all configuration to access a VM. That's it. Okay. So once it is done, right? Once you make sure that it's a web application is ready, then both the public IP address will be unregistered, will be removed. Okay. So when you unregistered, automatically this VM should not have any public IP address. This VM RDP will be disconnected. Okay. Now this VM should be bringing into the load balancer. So load balancer has a public IP address. Now, second point is we need to configure. Is this clear? This till now? Any confusion?
There we will use public IP. You said what will be to access to VM.
We need to deploy the web application. For that, we need to have by default we have the public IP address, right?
Yeah.
Right. By default we have the public IP address and we are accessing RDP, isn't it?
Okay.
We will be needing this configuration of we need to take the RDP and we need to configure install the IAS role, and we'll need to get ready because we need to verify if my load balancer is working or not. We will deploy web application for verifying a load balancer. Correct?
Yeah.
So to For that we should have this two public IP address individually. VM1 have that is in one public IP address, VM2 has a one public IP address, correct? Yes or no? VM1 has a public IP address and VM2 has a public IP address, correct?
Yes, correct.
And we are going to RDP this machine with the help of, we are accessing this machine, RDP.
RDP.
And we are going to do this, we are configuring IAS role for web application, correct?
Yes.
Clear this point till now? Then we need to create Azure Load Balancer. Now, when you create Azure Load Balancer, it would ask you to which one you want to select, basic or standard. Okay, basic or standard. So we will select basic, first one. Now second one is, it would ask you to create a load balancer frontline IP address, which is public. It would ask you to few options. Okay, you wanted to make this internal load balancer, you can do it. We wanted to make that is in public, you can also do it. We will talk about public IP address. In a production, it would be having an internal load balancer, right? For the testing purpose, we will be going to do this public. You will have some options, internal and external and internal. So we would be selecting for the public, and you are creating for new public IP address. New public IP address for load balancer. Again, this public IP address would be basic. Remember, we discussed about the two type of public IP address, which is basic and standard. Last class we discussed. When you're selecting the, when we're talking about the basic and standard. You remember when we are selecting the public IP address, we have that SKU we talked about, stock keeping unit, this one, right? We have the basic and advanced, right? So when you selected Azure Load Balancer basic, you must select for the public IP address is a basic. When you selected load balancer, it will ask you basic. You have already selected basic. Then while creating a public IP address for load balancer, then the public IP address must be selected basic only, right? And here you can have options to static and dynamic. You can select dynamic for the testing purpose. You can select it. Okay. Now after that, just for the need to remember the configuration steps, that's important. When we wanted to achieve successfully how the actual public IP address work, we can achieve it here. Now again, it would ask you to who is the backend pool. Okay, so you have the public IP address now, backend pool. The backend pools are VMs, VM1 and VM2. We need to add, and you can create it this backend pool. That is a name called as a load balancer underscore BP. Okay, and again this name called as a load balancer underscore public IP address. You can give the name. Okay, while creating load balancer, it is LB underscore PIP name. For backend pool, you can give the load balancer backend pool, and you need to add, we need to add both the VM, which is VM1 and VM2. Remember, if we are not, when we selecting the basic, of load balancer, if you not created the availability set, you won't be able to detect under this backend pool. It must be part of availability set. Okay, VM1 and VM2. Once it is added, you can finish it, you can complete it. Later you have the design for health probe, and you can create for load balancer underscore HP. So what is this HP here? Now this load balancer you need to tell, okay, load balancer you need to tell both the VMs. You are going to creating this health probe. This is load balancer underscore health probe. So you need to tell that is in. You need to tell that load balancer how many seconds I need to keep continuing, and what basis I can confirm this VM is not available, how much time I need to wait, how frequently I need to keep connecting these to VM. That information is verifying in health probe. So basic prerequisite is would be creating a load balancer. We would need a public IP address of the load balancer. We would need a backend pool. We would need for the health probe. Then the last is we need to have the load balancer rule. In this load balancer rule, whatever we created so far, right, which is load balancer underscore PIP public IP address, it would ask you, you need to provide that, and it would ask you to backend pool load balancer underscore BP, and it would ask you to load balancer underscore HP, which is health probe. These all configurations you need to configure properly. So once it is validated, okay, all set. Now here we have the design of load balancer rule. In this role, we need to update load balancer underscore public IP address, load balancer underscore backend pool, right? And we have to provide for load balancer underscore health pro. All these three we need to add it. It is done. Now, when end user is accessing to the internet, right? Now here, okay, now when end user is accessing, now end user, what IP address you need to provide here, right? This is a load balancer. Now he is going to connecting here. So the load balancer has a public IP address, right? So now we have the load balancer public IP address, right? Public IP address. So end user should be using public IP address. Now when you hit that public IP address, when you're accessing the browser public IP address, you should be able to access web application. But end user should not know which machine is connected. That machine is connecting, the responsibility is taken care by load balancer. Now he has to provide both the machine public IP address. He should also have the same public IP address. Web application, VM1 should have a load balancer public IP address, and VM2 also should have a load balancer public IP address. Both the machines should have the same public IP address. Now, the moment end user hitting to the public IP address, the load balancer should manage the traffic traffic to reach one of the machine. So he should be able to see this. He's connected to the VM1. For example, we will verify that connected to VM1, right? VM1. If we down this VM1, we'll verify, right? Obviously, this load balancer traffic has to divert to the VM2. So later, after a few seconds, you are going to accessing this web application should be connecting to
VM2.
Getting this point? Good to go. Understood the concept?
Yes.
Yes.
We'll go for the lab.
Okay, and here the user will be having the IP address of load balancer.
Correct. We need to provide them to, this is the web application link. Correct.
Okay.
This is very basic level we're talking about to understand the concept. Okay.
Yeah.
Now later we'll have a concept of that. We should not give the public IP address to the end user. We should give the URL. Correct.
Yeah.
We should give the URL. He should be able to access. And backend, to understanding this concept, we need to have this public IP address. But later, when you have the URL, that has to be registered on the DNS. That we'll talk about how it is going to be resolving with the public IP address to that domain name, and with your URL domain name with URL. And this load balancer should have that is in domain name with register that has to be connected to this 2VM. Right?
Right.
Good to go? All right. Okay. Who is going to share the screen?
Let me share my.
Yeah, good. Let me just allow you to share the screen.
Okay, let me know once my screen is visible. Okay, my screen is visible now.
Okay. Just first point, what you need to do, go for the step by step. Okay. Go to the creative VNet.
Yeah. Before that, I have to create a resource group.
Yes, yes, please, yes, please.